atomic.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the resumption of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT3 Championship for 2022, as hosted on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, that is iRacing. And today marks round 4 of the 9-round calendar as our drivers get ready to kick off the second of the 3 cups in the series, that being the America's Cup. Where are we today? Well, we're in the United States of the Americas for what is Road Atlanta, and the circuit located in the state of Georgia, an absolute thriller of a circuit, and we'll explain more why shortly, but it is a circuit not to be trifled with, and what a way to get things back underway at a circuit that will take no prisoners and indeed leave our drivers scratching their heads as to where they'll be able to rest, because it is an absolutely intense lap and we've got an intense schedule for you today. That schedule, times in British Summertime, that's BST or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1, is as follows. In just under 13 minutes time, we'll be heading into the revised qualifying format session, 15 minutes in length at 3:45, before making our way straight to the grid for the sprint race that follows at 4 o'clock. It'll be 25 minutes of racing action where all of our drivers will have no pit stops on the cards unless they pick up damage or a drive-through penalty, and the aim of the game is to get to the front of their respective class and bring on home the result for the big points within their class. But of course, can they do that here at the circuit, where at one moment a minor mistake could see them drop off track? We'll have to wait and see. All your racing action is being brought to you as a post-round broadcast. The race itself occurred earlier this week on what was Wednesday the 5th of October 2022. We're bringing it as if it were live today on Saturday the 8th of October, and this broadcast is being brought to you on 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to youtube.com and search for TX141TX, alternatively Paul Walsh, or if you're more of a Twitch person, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in there. And who is Paul Walsh? Who is TX141? Well, that is I, your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action today and indeed for the remainder of the season. And what a season we've got lying in wait. And remember, we're only a third of the way in. For as we take a look at the calendar, last time out, back on the 21st of September, we concluded the first of our 3 cups, the Euro Cup, which was a celebration of all circuits across the European continent, indeed circuits which consider a balance of characteristics in terms of handling, top speed and everything in between, and we wrapped up at Silverstone in round number 3, and what a thriller that was for our first feature race round of the season, where we declared our champions in the Pro-Am and also the Am classes for the Euro Cup. But now the story continues with the America's Cup today, and of course, Road Atlanta is our first of 3 venues, and the purpose of the America's Cup is to celebrate some of the best circuits out there across the American continents, both North America and also South America, and with Road Atlanta being our feature within the United States of America, we'll then be making our way to Circuit Charles Villeneuve, going a little bit further north into Canada for the infamous circuit, where indeed the walls come ever close in the hybrid rural street circuit, if you will, and then we'll be wrapping up the America's Cup on the 19th of October at Interlagos, down in the South American continent, particularly at Brazil, at the circuit which has seen many a champion crown in the world of Formula 1 over the last few years. Indeed, plenty of drama at Interlagos. The infamous "Is that Glock" moment will resonate in the minds of many. Almost now 2 decades old, that moment. Would you believe it? Time is charging on. But indeed, as time charges on, the racing always continues, and we will have our second feature race round of the season at Interlagos. Then we'll take another mid-season break before returning for the Japanese Cup, Cup number 3, starting on the 2nd of November, and the Japanese Cup purposefully being focused all around the celebration of all circuits in Japan, and we start off with Twin-Wing Motegi before going to Suzuka and then concluding the series at the Fuji International Speedway on the 16th of November. But coming back to the America's Cup, what is the archetype of the America's Cup circuits? The archetype is more around power and the ability to carry speed from corner to corner. All 3 circuits, where it's Road Atlanta today, next week Circuit Charles Villeneuve, or Interlagos, our final circuit in the America's Cup, they all place a major emphasis on rotating the car through corner apex as early as possible and then getting back on the throttle to charge the next corner. Indeed, many of these circuits see significant elevation changes, Circuit Charles Villeneuve being the exception, but Road Atlanta and Interlagos both have major elevation changes, and it's about keeping the revs high and keeping the power down to be able to get the most speed from those corner exits all the way up to the next corner, and particularly when you're charging uphill, alternatively if you're building that momentum downhill. But before we come on to the circuit for today and our specifics around it, let's come on to our classes and particularly the championship standings going into today. Starting off our Pro class, and you can see here we've got revised tables and all new special format as provided through collaboration between Middle of the Pack Racing League, also their Extreme Sim Racing and Mark Sykes designs. And we can see in the Pro class, Jason Landry goes into today the leader of the Pro Championship by a margin of 10 points over Luke Burtenshaw. The story between the two of them, Burtenshaw took first blood all the way back in round number 1, but it's Landry who rides high on the tide of 2 back-to-back wins, and can he make it 3 in a row today? Behind him in P3, let's not count out Tanner Dibble, the driver who started off slow in round number 1 but has been building a lot of momentum and has really become the ultimate third party attacking into that top 2, and only 3 points behind Luke Burtenshaw. Can Dibble today jump into P2? That'll be the big challenge for him. Jordan Butler in P4 there, ahead of John Lauzon. They complete the top 5 with them Ben Rose, Shane Larson and Edwin Onofre completing all of our Pro standings. Then we come to our Pro-Am class, and we can see here the story is a bit similar, but there are some key differences. The first one, James Logsdon leads the championship on 119 points by a comfortable margin of 12 points over a driver who you'll be thinking, wasn't that guy in the AM class before we concluded the Euro Cup? Well, you'd be right. Matthew Smith has been promoted between the Cups to the Pro-Am class. Given his performance in the AM class, we absolutely dominated in the first 3 rounds. He's earned himself a place in the Pro-Am division and now sits there in P2 on 107 points when the points have been recalculated to take into account the points he accrued from rounds 1 to 3. Ilya Speaker there in P3, only 1 point behind. Now the big question will of course be, can Smith and Speaker put aside their initial differences as rivals to go hunting down Logsdon, or will it be the case that Speaker has to focus more on Smith, or will Smith find that the pace he's taken within the AM class puts him a bit further into the midfield of the Pro-Am division? All that is to be found out. Jermaine Warren in P4 ahead of Fernando Takahashi by 10 points. Those two drivers really pressing on, and Takahashi perhaps being the understated Mr. Consistent, not quite up there stealing the headlines, but stealing the points and continue to deliver. Millen Harris in P6 ahead of John Wilding by only a single point there, with Justin Bragg a further 2 points behind, and then Spencer Torrance and Alexander Carver-Robbins completing the top 10, with John Crewman and Albert Brown completing the rest of the Pro-Am division. And then we come on to the AM class, and well, with Matthew Smith being promoted, we now have a power vacuum, and that vacuum at the moment is being temporarily filled by Michael Zepp on 83 points at the top of the standings. But why do I say temporarily filled? Well, it's not to besmirch Michael Zepp's reputation at all, but we have seen in this AM class how close it has been between Zepp, between Jesse Jameson Jr., between PG Christensen, Glenn Bratton, you name it. All these guys have been very close to delivering behind Matthew Smith, and now they all get a huge opportunity to shine. But on top of that as well, we've got 3 drivers who've been reassigned to the AM division from the Pro-Am division based on the results in the first 3 rounds, and also to open up the AM class even further. And those 3 drivers are Roger Ganesh, who you can see there in P8, Brandon Melling, who's down there in what is P11, and also Blake Phillips, who sits there in P15. And all 3 of these drivers were right towards what was the bottom end of the Pro-Am division's pace at certain points, but we're expecting them to really shake things up in the AM class, and we look forward to seeing how they get on. But to roll you through the AM class, it stands with Michael Zepp at the top of the standings by only 5 points, with Jesse Jameson Jr. looking to take the fight to him, and PG Christensen a further 7 points behind. Let's not forget about Glenn Bratton or Joe Nagy there, separated by only 3 points, and can they potentially get themselves into the top 3 here at Road Atlanta? The same for Dan Ocaranza there on 63 points. You would imagine he would love to break his way into the top 5. Mark Senegal 3 points behind him, and then Roger Ganesh, Jose Maury and Lee Porter completing that top 10, and it is so close. Only 33 points between 1st and 10th, and then Braden Mellon, Kevin Lizarazo, Adrian Fedorowski, Stefan Chalafu, Blake Phillips and Sahaj Padilla are all trying to get into that top 10, and that's how close the AM class is. But speaking of things being close, they're going to be cutting it close today at the Michelin Raceway, Road Atlanta, our circuit located near the town of Brazelton in Hall County of the state of Georgia in the United States of America. As you can see from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, is a circuit which is all about fast flowing corners. And whilst this 2D image does not tell you about all the undulations, if I was to say to you that the turn uphill from turn 1 to 2 is one of the highest gradients corners on the circuit in terms of going uphill, well, you'll have to see it to believe it, because it is an absolute sweeper of a corner. Indeed, the story from turns 1 all the way up to 5 is the run through sweepers, and there's a blind braking zone over the crest of turn 2 into turn 3 while drives begin a descent down through turn 4 the left hander, and then through what's known as the S's, not officially given numbers as corners. It's completely flat out in these GT3 class machines in the run from turn 4 to turn 5, and then they've got the hard left hander at turn 5 where they need to nail it so they can carry the speed up towards turns 6 and 7. Now the first 5 corners, and they've done half the lap already, but as they make the way towards turn 6 and 7, the 2 slice corners on the circuit, it'll be about being brave on the brakes and getting as late an apex as possible to push the car through, and particularly at turn number 7, the slice corner on the circuit, because if they now turn 7, they'll take a little bit of extra speed down to the back straight. Running through the kinks of 8 and 9, completely flat out there through the left and right, they then make their way downhill into the heavy braking zone for turn 10, or what's known as 10A and 10B, with the chicane being broken up into 2 parts. And drivers will navigate that, and that chicane being a more modern addition to the Road Atlanta circuit. It used to be the case that our drivers just simply went in a straight line all the way out towards where turn 11 now stands, and as they make their way out of turns 10A and 10B, they make their way uphill and over the ridge of turn number 11 and downhill through the fast-flying right-hander of turn number 12, and that will complete a lap of Road Atlanta. And that's just the description, but when you do get to ride on board shortly, you'll get to see just how terrifying this circuit is and why it is going to create a crescendo or a cacophony of battling. There's no doubt about that. But as we come to our rules, we did say a little bit earlier there's been some changes to the rules, particularly around qualifying. You can see it there highlighted in bright red, but let's give you a recap of all the rules. In terms of setup, drivers shall run the iRacing sprint setup for all rounds, with car fuel loads being restricted to 51%. In qualifying, we have decided to completely revise the format for you guys and girls tuning at home as a spectacle, and also for our drivers to have a little bit more pressure added into the mix, and indeed a little bit more company out on circuit. Previously, we had lone qualifying for these sprint races, whereby our drivers all took to an isolated instance of the circuit, and therefore they had the opportunity to put in their laps and not have to worry about navigating traffic or finding space on circuit, and alternatively they weren't able to gain the slipstream draft off of one another. But now it's an open qualifying format, which will mean that everybody will be out on circuit, albeit to avoid too much traffic out on circuit, what we decided to do is split the session up into 2 equal halves. So in the 15 minutes, you will see the AM class, only the AM class, take to the circuit for the first half, for the first 7.5 minutes. They'll then be called into the pits, and then we'll see the Pro-Am and the Pro classes jointly take to the circuit for the second half of qualifying, so they'll have the latter 7.5 minutes. As for the race, the rules stay as they are. The race will start under manual double fold rolling start, with the formation being held up to the green flag, with each driver having 1 fast repair available, and if a driver accumulates 25 or more instant points, they will be handed a drive-through penalty for their misdemeanors. But that's enough rules, regulations, and everything else in between. Let's head back to circuit side here as our drivers get ready to go, and well, all of them itching right now. I think some of them coming through the driver's briefing at this time, but we can see here one of many in the form of DNA Motorsports is Jordan Butler heading across the timeline here. Only 2 minutes to go before we head into qualifying, into the first instance of the revised qualifying format. And what I can tell you, down in the paddock, all the drivers absolutely excited to be out there on circuit with one another in qualifying rather than the lone qualifying format. It just adds a little bit more drama and indeed tension to the mix. And speaking of those enjoying the tension in the mix, we can see a number of you there in the YouTube and Twitch chats, and do not be shy, feel free to say hi in the chat if you are able to tune in and say hello. And if not, I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you're having a great weekend. Well, we've been Saturday today, and we say hello there in particular in the YouTube chat to Michael Zeb, also to Roberto Takahashi, and well, we can see as our drivers make the way on down. Michael Zepp saying had to miss this race. Very unfortunate, Michael, but still at the same time, I do hope that you're able to rejoin us for round number 5, because it's going to get ever tighter in the AM class with the recent additions and also the shake-up of the class in terms of who's in it and not. But also that I think Auto Roberto Takahashi might be perhaps a family relation to this man, Fernando Takahashi, parking up on the side of the road there in the run to turn number 1. I think the Brazilian driver just parking up and waiting to go race now, the minute left on the clock. But in terms of who's setting the time boards alight so far, well, let's talk a little bit about, or give you a reminder of how you tell who's in which class. You can see on the timing tower there on the left hand side of your screen, and also in the bottom left hand corner in terms of who we've got highlighted. Drivers have colour sashes attributed to them. Those with a blue sash, like John Mal's here, the Blue Flag Motorsports driver who makes his way through turn number 11, they are pro drivers. Meanwhile, those with a green sash, such as Justin Bragan here, they are your Pro-Am drivers. And then the ones with orange, well, you probably already guessed it, they are your AM drivers. And that's how you tell. So blue is for Pro, green is for Pro-Am, and then orange is for AM. But indeed, you can see many a driver trying to mix things up. We've got some drivers who are a little bit out of sorts at the moment, including Albert Brand, who does seem to be having a bit of a difficult final practice session here. Currently down in P19 overall with 24 drivers in attendance. And we've also got, by the looks of things, one of our pros not having the best of sessions at the moment. That's Luke Burtenshaw, but I think he might right now just be putting in race pace rather than qualifying practice as the Vector by RSR driver makes his way through turn at number 10 in the Porsche 911. And, well, one big thing to note here, Jason Landry, our fastest pro at the moment, well, he is listed. In fact, that time does not qualify there. I think Milan Harris and Jason Landry have both glitched our timing board. But I think Landry there in a Lamborghini. And we'll tell you why that's a bit important in a second. But we transition over to qualifying. And now it will be the situation whereby our AM drivers are given the opportunity to make the way out into the circuit for the first half of this qualifying session. 15 minutes, 7.5 for our AMs, 7.5 for our primes and pros together. And who will come out on top come the end of it? Well, let's find out as we see all our drivers starting to make the way out of the pit lane, including Blake Phillips here, the 221 driver, as he makes his way on through. And a very distinctive livery there for Blake Phillips in the yellow and black BMW M4. And I must admit, I don't know about you guys and girls tuning at home, but I do have a soft spot for yellow cars, particularly this type of yellow when they're on a racing circuit. Not necessarily out on the street, perhaps yellow's a bit too extreme in terms of street colours, but I do find, I was trying to think of a word there to describe without using the term garish, which I don't actually think is a term in the dictionary, but I do find that yellow really suits a race car. And well, you do see the poster children of the Ferraris, for example, which do have the wonderful yellows on them. I think really Blake Phillips here is going to be getting a lot of photographers looking at the car, there's no doubt about that. But we also see Jose Mauri making his way on through in the Unicorn machine. That is the MP4 12C McLaren, the Unicorn, because it's very rare, you don't normally see it in these series, as he makes his way on out to turn number 7. As more drivers come on around here, who's the lead driver in the group? I do believe it is Samuel Curran right now. Newcomer to the series, Samuel Curran, and making his debut here today, which is great to see as he heads on down towards turn number 10. And as he heads into the braking zone here, Curran will be our first driver to head around in this qualifying session to set a flying lap for our AMs, and we'll ride on board with him and let him take you around with a thrilling lap of the Road Atlanta circuit. That he makes his way on down, and we clear the screen of all the information here, heading his way up towards turn number 1. We bring the dashboard up in the bottom right corner, and as he makes his way into turn 1, onto the brakes from 152 miles an hour, trail braking down to 4th gear, and now making his way uphill towards turn number 2. The blind summit away, so he brings it into left-hander 2, has to stamp on the brakes for turn 3, and only then do you see turn 3 as you're about to hit the apex curve. Downhill through turn number 4, and now into the sweeping S's as he makes his way flat out through this sequence of corners, and then onto the brakes for turn number 5, riding that right and curving as his entry curving for turn 5, balances nicely in 3rd gear before heading up towards turn number 6, and he's completed the first half of the lap. Now coming down from 4th gear on the brakes, in fact from 5th gear down to 3rd gear, and as he makes his way out and into the slowest corner here, when he go down to 2nd gear, he does indeed, dropping down to about 55 miles an hour at corner apex, before now powering out and heading all the way up towards turn 10. But he has a breather at this point, and indeed, what a well done job. He's earned that breather, he's earned that respite, but now he's got to get ready as he makes his way up into 5th gear, and will shortly be hitting 6th gear as he continues to charge all the way down towards turn 10. And watch the depression here, he literally goes down, and in the olden days the car would scrape at the bottom, but as he stamps on the anchors here, down the gearbox to 2nd gear, flying through the left into right-hander of the turn 10 chicane, over the crest to turn number 11, staying over to the right to straight line it into 12, and as he comes through the right-hander of 12, that is a lap of Road Atlanta. And where will that put Samuel Curran? Well, it gives us our fastest time so far, our only time so far, and that is in the form of a 1:19.154. And well, count everybody else respond. That will be the big changes. We do see the Team Barefoot driver making his way down into turn at number 3, but as he does so far, it looks as though Curran has set the best lap of the first 4 to put times in, but plenty more times to come, including the BMW M4 here of Lizarazo, who goes P6. We can see how Alcaranza has gone all the way up to P3, and the Ferrari 488 driver here in the GT3 Evo machine, the 2020 platform. He'll be looking to see what else is out there. He's currently a whole second off of Curran, but it does look as though right now our pole sitter, our provisional pole sitter, has set a time which is going to be a high bar for everybody to beat. The only driver who's come close by 1.5 times is Blake Phillips so far, as Phillips makes his way into turn number 7. But meanwhile, what about drivers who've yet to set a time? Well, that includes Jesse Jameson Jr., who makes his way out to turn 5 in the MOP machine there, the middle of the pack racing machine in the official colours of the MOP racing team, and so far yet to put a time on the board. I think it was a disallowed lap, the previous one. He's making his way on around again here. And it's very easy to pick up and off track at Road Atlanta. If you carry a bit too much momentum through the corners, you will have to back it off, otherwise you'll send it wide. And there's not really much space to run off. Even coming downhill through turns 2, 3 and 5, there's not much space, and therefore our drivers have got to be very careful. They get it wrong, they could be in the walls, or at least putting the car in the wrong direction. But as we see here, Jameson heading on down towards turn 10. Got a bit of traffic in front of him there. Everybody stacking up together. And I'm hearing that Jose Mauri is making his way around as well. Yet to set a lap time. Where's the McLaren driver? We'll find him shortly. But Jameson heading over the crest of 11 down towards 12 here in the Mercedes 2020 Evo GT3. And as he comes across the line, what's it going to be? It's P4 so far. We've still got approximately 3 minutes of this qualifying session for the AMS to go. But so far, it's Samuel Curran who's at the top of the board. And he's there by a margin of 1.7 tenths. As meanwhile, at the bottom of the AM class, it's PG Christensen as he makes his way across the timeline. And what's this going to be? He moves up to P8 there in the M4 as he crosses the line and now looks to go on to another lap. Not long left. Our drivers have got 2 more laps in the tank. When we do hit 7.5 minutes, our AM drivers who are on a lap will be permitted to finish the lap, but then they'll be expected to make their way into the pits immediately as per the rule set. But it does look as though Jose Mauri not quite on the pace so far in the McLaren. But again, this is a bit of a difficult beast. It can be very fast at Road Atlanta when it's all hooked up. I think Mauri just trying to get the tyres in the zone in terms of temperature and also getting those brakes locked in as well. But as he makes his way into turn at number 7 here, the 233 driver doing everything he can to deliver. As meanwhile, Samuel Curran goes even faster by another tenth to Blake Phillips, I should say. Now almost 3 tenths is the delta between Curran and Phillips as Phillips crosses the line and does not improve. But what about Mark Senegal? Well, he's come into the pit, and so has Adrian Fedorowski. So 2 of our AM drivers have decided enough's enough. They're coming on in, but we've still got more times coming. Here comes Kevin Lizarazo as he makes his way through at turn number 12, and as he comes to the timeline, he improves to P6, but is immediately demoted as Jameson jumps up to P4. So Lizarazo right now making ground, but so many of our drivers making ground outside of the top 2, including Diane Ocaranza, who in the Ferrari now up into P3 by only a tenth over Jameson, but a tenth or a thousandth, it doesn't matter, it's a blaze, and it's going to be critical here because overtaking is highly possible at Road Atlanta, but it's tricky, and that's the thing. When you're up front, you have track position advantage, and that just gives you a little bit more comfort. And as we see the Chilean there with the Chilean flag on the side of the car, unless my geography, indeed my understanding of flags is incorrect, making his way into turn number 6. He's looking good so far, and indeed he's now got to try and find a bit more time to close down Curran and Phillips, who seem to be in a bit of a world of their own, with Phillips there 7 tenths faster than Ocaranza and a further 2 tenths to Samuel Curran in pole position at this time. But as they head on down here, we look to Glenn Bratton, the Audi driver, making his way on around, the Audi R8 driver. Again, another rare bear of a car as he makes his way up towards turn number 10. And the German machine there, the Audi R8 LMS 2015 machine, powered by a V10 engine, and it absolutely roars. I can tell you, when you hear while these going past you at a circuit, you know it's an Audi engine because it absolutely screams with its 10 cylinders as he makes his way down towards the chicane. I think this is going to be a bit of a tricky car to get a good result in at the Road Atlanta circuit, the Audi R8, because it's a car that's more focused on handling and acceleration rather than straight line speed and power. But we'll have to wait and see. Of course, that being based on the iRacing balance of performance. But as we do see Bratton coming across the line, that's his last lap delivered. He's just come across the line, 2 seconds short of being able to get another one in. Jose Mauri goes faster. Bratton is demoted to last in the AMS. But as our AMS come through here, I think they're all said and done for the most part. I think Jesse Jamison Jr. is the only one who's actually been able to sneak his way onto another lap. But now we do have our pros and primes heading out of the circuit, and we see Edwin Offred, the lead driver, to come out of the pit lane for the second half. And immediately, as soon as the clock struck 7.5 minutes remaining, all of them have absolutely torn their way out of the pit lane, and was just fantastic to see. I think our drivers are really enjoying this revised format, it has to be said, as we see them making the way on down. A little bit of weaving there from our Porsche driver. I believe that's Matthew Smith, and of course Matthew Smith today has got a bit of an odd situation to deal with, in the fact that he's been promoted a class, and therefore he's got to think to himself, okay, what's it going to be like racing with these guys? We was racing with a good number of the primes before, to be fair, so I don't think he'll feel too much out of his comfort zone, but it's always a bit of a special aura when you're the guy who got promoted in class. And as he makes his way on down towards turn number 10, we'll have to wait and see how the newly promoted prime driver does here in his new class today. But as he heads on through, we look to our lead driver in the pro and prime group of Edwin Offred, our pro driver, as he takes us on down for a lap in the Mercedes AMG. So making his way up towards the timeline and now towards turn number 1. We bring the dashboard up once again in the bottom right corner, breaking his way into turn 1 as late as possible here, and coming down to 4th gear and carrying a lot more speed through the corner than perhaps many would try to do so on their first fly up. Over the crest and down into turn 3 he goes, into 3rd gear, and this is where we may see the Mercedes come unstuck. It's got quite a lot of inherent understeer with the engine being in the front of the car, and as he makes his way through the S's here, no trouble with understeer so far as he puts a little bit of snap braking in there, coming down to 3rd gear, exiting out of turn number 5, and now making his way up towards turn number 6. charging all the way up towards turn 6 here on the brakes to the 50-metre ward and coming all the way down the gearbox to third gear and now into turn number 7. He needs to hook this up from third gear to second. He drops, and as he comes through the corner, they're dropping to 55 miles an hour on corner apex and now powering out and just listen to the engine. Building his way up through the gears. That 6.3 litre V8 absolutely thundering along, and now down into turn 10 he drops and onto the brakes he goes from the 150 metre mark down the gearbox all the way to second gear, and as he clears 10A now into 10B, straight line between the two apexes, a perfect run there almost, and as he comes over the crest and now down towards turn number 12, completely flat out, full commitment here to the line. And what's it going to be from Edwin Offre? Well, it's going to be an 18.94, but already more times coming on in, and drivers really are looking to deliver as they come on around. And we can see Spencer Torrance going a bit faster, but then James Logsdon going even faster in the Mercedes. And well, which car's going to be strong here, do we reckon? We do believe that the Mercedes and the BMWs, they love power circuits, so they will be looking good, but we're not going to count out the Porsche 911s either. And indeed, we can see Luke Burtenshaw, he was a bit slow in that practice warm-up session, but he's not looking slow now as the Vector by RSR driver as he makes his way down the hill. Currently P2 provisional overall, and indeed the leader of the pros. But looking at James Logsdon, meanwhile, this is a prime driver who is absolutely delivering right now, on fire, all cylinders kicking. And I think for Logsdon, he's looking right on form as he makes his way up through turn number 6 and up towards turn number 7. But the question is for him, will he be dethroned from overall pole position, or will he make history here today in the series by taking an overall pole position despite not being in the top class? He'll be our first prime driver to do so, I can tell you that now. But as he makes his way all the way up towards turn number 10, he'll have to wait to see if he does get that little accolade. Meanwhile, we look to one driver who, in a different car from what we've seen, Jason Landry here in the Lamborghini Huracan Evo GT3. Now, why is this important? Well, drivers are permitted to change cars over the course of the season, but it does mean they will take a 30-point drop in the championship. So whatever score Jason Landry has up to this point, the fact that he's changed car means that after this round, he will have 30 points deducted from his championship score, which will make the change all the more difficult for Landry. And we'll give you an update on that when we go into round number 5 on the championship standings, of course. But as he comes down for 11 and into 12 here, I think making the switch car for a more stable platform, the Lamborghini Huracan, a bit of an all-rounder in its class, not exceptional at anything, powered by the Audi R8, same engine, that V10 Audi engine. But as he makes his way into turn 1, the difference between the two cars, the Lamborghini has a little bit more straight line speed, not as strong in the corners, but it's a very stable car, and I think that might be why Landry's gone for it, given how unstable the Porsche was for all of our drivers, and many are drivers switching away from the Porsche and deciding to go for cars which are a little bit more power orientated or more centered in terms of their performance characteristics. Indeed, the Lamborghini being one of those, another one of those contenders being the BMW M4, which puts a bit of a greater emphasis on the combination of handling and power. But as we see Landry heading on through here, it's the case that he's just currently in P3 overall, P2 in the pro class qualifying, but nobody able to currently dethrone James Logsdon by looks of things, as we see Landry making his way out of turn number 7. And as he comes on through, we do have Dan Ocaranza here still heading on around. I think that's a bit of a mistake for Ocaranza, or perhaps he's just simply trying to make his way into the pit lane, where that qualifying time's not going to count if he does improve. Meanwhile, Jermaine Warren here currently P9, not having the strongest of qualifying sessions, Jermaine Warren, and we have seen a bit of an odd trend in his performances over the first 3 rounds. Really strong performance at the season opener of Red Bull Ring, hasn't quite been able to really find that momentum that we saw at the Red Bull Ring, but he's been up there battling for the top 5 in class. And can he potentially today subvert expectations in the Ferrari 488 Evo and find a way to get right back up there? I don't think he's got quite the time in the car to chase down Logsdon at the moment, but we'll have to wait and see what he can do later on in this qualifying session. He's only got 1.5 minutes to go, it'll be 2 more laps as he crosses the timeline. The lap time here being 1 minute 20 and lower. And as he makes his way into turn number 1, he's got all the work to do. But meanwhile, we look to John Lauzon making his way out of turn number 7 and down the back straight for Blue Flag Motorsports, and another driver who right now I don't think has shown us his true potential in the car. He's currently 6.5 tenths off of James Logsdon, but as he makes his way down the back straight here, he's currently in 2 personal best sectors, as we say hello to Edwin Offre there, or GT_Eddie in the Twitch chat, who's just woken up on time to check out the race, and we really appreciate that, GT Eddie, and I hope you're doing well, you've had a good sleep. But as our drivers make the way on through, and particularly Lauzon, he hasn't quite improved in subsector 3, and as he comes down towards the timeline here, what's it going to be? I think it's going to be a faster line, but how much further up the order will it promote him as he crosses the line? He moves up to P8, and well, he's still our lowest placed road driver, but he's a lot closer to his contemporaries, and particularly Edwin Offre now, who is only the best part of what is 4 well, in fact, 300ths off it, or 3,000ths off it. I need to get my eyesight adjusted as he makes his way down through 3 and into 4. So Lauzon has got a lot of time out there, but everybody is running out of time to deliver as we see James Logsdon making his way downhill once again, gets it a bit wrong there and has to take to the escape road and get the car stopped. That'll be his qualifying session done and dusted, and now can Luke Burtenshaw, who's only half a tenth of a Logsdon, respond here in the critical moment as he goes a little bit deep and turn on fire. You just saw him miss the apex and that sent the car wide, and I think that may be it for Burtenshaw. I'm not sure that's going to count as an off track or not, but that's going to cost him a lot of time, and I don't think he might be able to find that time back. But as he makes his way through 6 and 7, he's been a bit unsettled, I can tell you, through turn number 5, and that has cost him dearly. At 60 he went wide. Meanwhile, looking to the timeline here, Jordan Butler goes P3. A nice lap there from Butler. Who else has just come across the line behind him? Well, we can see by looks like one of our middle of the pack BMWs coming from. That was Justin Braggan, who did not improve either. The checker flag is out, so all the times are now really coming in. The final times we see Spencer Torrance coming on downhill as he makes his way through the right hand to complete his session. And what's it going to be for Torrance as he crosses the line? Well, it's not going to be improving. Indeed, many of our drivers not improving now. And, well, the only driver who's out there on another lap is Albert Brand. I do not think that Luke Burtenshaw is going to improve it, given how wrong it went in the first half lap. He's into the pits. He's decided enough's enough. And Albert Brand's the only other driver who could potentially upset the apple cart here for James Logsdon. Assuming the lap stands, we can't confirm that until we make our way over to the grid. But as Brand comes on down, he's currently P2. He's one of the lowest placed Pro-Am driver. And as he comes through the final quarter, he crosses the line, he improves. But it does not move him up a position. And that is qualifying complete. So, subject to laps being confirmed and locked in, James Logsdon has taken pole position in the Pro-Am class and overall making it a new season record for James Logsdon. Indeed, the first driver to ever take the overall pole position outside of the top class in the series. But as we do wait for the transition over, we can see Burtenshaw taking the Pro pole position and Samuel Curran taking the Am pole position. And we're only approximately 1.5 minutes away, if that, from making our way down to the grid. As we do wait to go racing here, we can tell you there is a pleasant day at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Conditions a bit warm, may lead to some tyres overheating late on in the race and quite a high level of tyre degradation, but this circuit is very pressing on tyres regardless of how hot or cool it is, and therefore our drivers have got to be careful and balance those tyres, particularly those in cars such as the Ferrari and the Porsche, where those rear tyres may light up very quickly and feel the pain later on in the race. But of course, the biggest pain here at Road Atlanta is keeping it on circuit and not succumbing to falling off of the roller coaster ride of a circuit that is the Brazelton Town venue. But without further ado, we get ready to go to the grid, and let's take you through the grid for round number 4. So this is how they line up, and it is confirmed that in a series opening record, James Logsdon takes pole position in the Pro-Am class, but more importantly, overall for Team Bear Pope by a margin of 3.5 hundredths versus Luke Burtenshaw in the end. The Briton from Vector by RSR missing out on pole overall, but taking pole position in the Pro class. Behind them on row number 2, we have Jordan Butler and Jason Landry, the two Pro drivers. The DNA Motorsports driver taking that P3 ahead of Jason Landry, the privateer. And then we have Millen Harris from Rockefeller Racing taking P5, joined on the third row by John Lauzon from Blue Flag Motorsports. Behind them, Jermaine Warren and Ilya Speaker, they make up row number 4, with Samuel Curran, the Am pole sitter, taking P9 on the 5th row, joined by Spencer Torrance from Firelight Motorsports. We then have Matthew Smith on his debut in the Pro-Am class from DNA Motorsports in P11 there, lined up on what is our 6th row, joined by Blake Phillips. And Phillips looking very fast and looking to take the fight to Samuel Curran. You can be sure of that from P12. Behind them, a little bit further down, on row number 7, we have Justin Braggan, the privateer there, line up in the 171 car, P13, joined by Edwin Offra there, P14. And then Dan Ocaranza, P15, the Chilean being joined by the Brazilian Fernando Takahashi, who starts P16 on the 8th row. On row number 9, Jesse Jamison Jr. from Middle of the Pack Racing, joined by Kevin Lizarazo. And then we do have Mark Senegal and Albert Brand behind them. But as the field gets away here for what is the manual rolling start, and we can see behind the safety car, the formation lap is about to get underway. Behind our 9th row drivers, we have Mark Senegal and Albert Brand lined up on the 10th row there. Albert Brand having a difficult qualifying session in the Pro-Am class, and he's got it all to do in the race. And then PG Christensen and Jose Maury starting on our 11th row. And then it will be Glenn Bratton and Adrian Federowski, our last two drivers, who make up row number 12 the two AM drivers there starting towards the back. And as we get ready to go racing here, that is the grid. And now when we come around next time around, it'll be time for us to go racing, and it'll be 25 minutes of racing. Who will be our winners in class? Only time will tell. But as we do look to the blimp camera here, the blimp just making its way on around the circuit right now. Wonderful view of all the cars heading on through the countryside here. And as I try to make the way on down through the S's, well, all the colours in splendour here. And the big challenge will be the run in through turn number 1, all the way through turns 2, 3 and into 4, where many of our drivers may just find themselves under a lot of pressure. But we're hearing that Jose Mari's in fact had to go to the pits. In fact, I think there's been a bit of contact or something's gone wrong for Jose Mari. He's had to jump to the pits already. I think there might have been an issue with the car, and it's broken down as it's made its way through turns 2 and 3. We didn't quite catch up on camera, but something has gone wrong for Jose Mari. So we've already got a retirement before we've gone to the green flag, which is very unfortunate for the McLaren driver. And we hope to see him back in round number 5, firing on all cylinders. We do not enjoy retirements during the formation lap, but these things happen, of course, much like in the world of real-world motorsport. But as we say hello there to Daddy's Got a Race, saying James needs to be bumped to the pro class, and that's with regards to James Logsdon, as I understand it, referring there. Well, indeed, pressure will all be on James Logsdon, but also pressure is going to be on this man, Samuel Curran, who'll be starting from what is P10. And as we ride on board here from the gyro roll cage bar, he's got in front of him a whole roster of pros and primes, and behind him he's got one AM who's very close to him, and that's Blake Phillips, the row behind. And can Samuel Curran get a good start and break away from Blake Phillips, or will Phillips be able to subvert expectations and get ahead of Samuel Curran come the end of lap number 1? Well, whilst they've got pressure on, the man at the front of the field who will take us to the green, James Logsdon from Team Bear Pope in the 142 car, he also will have the major pressure on him of needing to deliver and get their absolutely brilliant start. But as they head down towards turn 10, it's now up to him to decide when we go to the green. And I think immediately he's gone already, as Logsdon. No, in fact he's not, he's backed off a little bit. And as they make their way through the final corner, it's green flag and go. James Logsdon leads the drivers across the line. But look at this from Luke Burtenshaw. He wasn't caught napping, and Burtenshaw immediately going on the offensive into turn number 1. On the inside he goes. Millen, Harris and Butler also going side by side, but Jordan Butler holding firm. And meanwhile, as they make their way up the hill further back, we see Landry versus Harris as they make their way through 2 and into 3. Into the right hand they go, and they make it through. And Millen Harris holds the position versus Landry, and Landry losing out versus Harris on the opening couple of corners. Further back we can see that Blake Phillips got the jump on Samuel Curran. We thought it may happen, and it has happened. Blake Phillips up to P10 and to Samuel Curran P11. And well, Jermaine Warren meanwhile runs a little bit wide coming out to turn number 5 and down towards 6. They charge here as they head into the right hander. But you can see Ilya Speaker meanwhile having to hold off Spencer Torrance, and Spencer Torrance, no stranger to battling with Speaker as they make their way into turn number 7. Through the right hander they go, and now onto the back straight for the first time under race pace conditions. Further back we've got side by sides here between our AM drives. That's Mark Senegal making his way past Daniel Carranza, and behind Albert Brand picking off Adrian Fedorowski there as they head down the back straight as well. But as they come charging on through, we look all the way out towards our leader and James Logsdon, where he started on pole, and he continues to hold on to that lead of the race. But he's got Burtenshaw all over the back of him, Jordan Butler there behind. Meanwhile, Speaker on the inside here of Torrance, and Torrance trying to go outside to inside, but Speaker holding him off for Rockefeller Racing as they make their way through the left into right combination, and they go over the hill and down towards turn number 12. They roll once again, but meanwhile further behind we can see that Justin Braggan all over the back of Fernando Takahashi as they make the way to the end of the first lap, and Justin Braggan looking for that opportunity as they head on to lap number 2. But as they come charging across the line, let's take you through that top 10 as it currently stands. It is James Logsdon who leads the field by only a couple of attempts, ahead of Luke Burtenshaw P2, then Jordan Butler P3, Milan Harris P4, followed by Jason Landry P5, then John Lauzon P6, Jermaine Warren P7, followed by Ilya Speaker in at P8, and then we do have what is behind him, Spencer Torrance P9, followed by Blake Phillips, your AM leader in P10, and Samuel Curran just behind him, best the rest in P11 as the two AM drives inch ever close to one another. We've got Glenn Bratton into the pits. We heard he's picked up damage on the open lap and off track right towards the end of the lap, and he's had to make his way on in. As our drivers all coming through, we look a little bit further back here to Justin Bratton, who continues to inch closer and closer to the back of Fernando Takahashi, and Kevin Lizarazo here just watching right now, a bit of a spectator, but I think trying to think how he can get to the mix to pick up some overall positions later on in the race. But as they come on through, we must look from them back to Speaker here, who's putting the pressure on Jermaine Warren, and as we ride on board the gearbox, in fact, of Jermaine Warren, you can see that Speaker's actually got more pressure behind him from what is Spencer Torrance, and Torrance been made to go to the grass there. There's been a bit of an incident, and Torrance been forced wide. Now, was room afforded? We only saw a distant camera shot, but I think there, Torrance may have been squeezed a bit too firmly by Speaker, and I think there may be a word about that after the race between the pair, but we've only seen it from one perspective, a very distant perspective, so we don't know the full story. But what the story we do know is that Justin Brayton continues to harass the back of Fernando Takahashi, perfecting P7 in the prime class, and as they make their way into the right-hander at turn 1, Brayton's going for the move for P14 overall, but he goes deep and has to bring the brakes back on and runs wide, and as a result Takahashi gets the place back and saying that patience is key. Well, indeed he's proven that as they make the way down the hill through turns 2, 3 and 4 once more, but as they come charging down, we look a bit further behind them. And we can see that Albert Brand has finally found his way past Mark Senegal, but Senegal's now got the pressure of Adrian Federowski as they make the way down the hill and up towards turn number 5. But whilst all this is happening, we're hearing that Jesse Jameson Jr. has had a spin at the chicane. Well, it's the case of the middle of the pack racing driver not having a happy day at the office, but we must look from him back to the battle here between Senegal and Adrian Federowski. And Federowski looking for the move, and I'm hearing that Spencer Torrance has had to jump to the pit, and that's happened off camera. I wonder if it's the damage he picked up from having the scrape with the wall on the previous lap at the end of this back straight, and he's had to bring the car on in. But Torrance in the pit lane, and as well Jesse Jameson's into the pit lane. But meanwhile, as they make the way all the way through, we must look from at Senegal. Well, we continue to watch Senegal versus Federowski here as they make the way in the run. I think Federowski's going to look for the move up the inside. Onto the brakes they go. Federowski goes all in here and gets the move done. He just about brings it together for QZ Motorsports A. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Luke Burtenshaw has got ahead of James Logston. Now, we haven't seen it on camera, but I believe the Team Bear Boat driver made a mistake coming out to turn number 10 and lost the momentum over 11 and down into 12, and now has been dropped down to P2 as a result. He's still leading in the Prime class, however, so the pressure is not on him at the moment, given the fact the next Prime driver is Milan Harris, who you can see there in the pink and black Rockefeller Racing 169 machine. But as they make the way out to turn number 5 and up towards turn 6, it's got quite a gap to go to hunt down Logston, who is 2 seconds up the road, but James Logston backing off. I think Logston at this point deciding discretion is the better part of valour and opting not to try and outrun the pro drivers here, and instead just focus on leading the prime race, which I think is sensible from the Mercedes driver this early in the race, given that Burtenshaw and Butler are chasing one another, and they're chasing one another hard, and Burtenshaw in fact does now start to be seemingly breaking away from the rest of the field. It would be wise for Logston just to focus on running his race in P3, and if Jason Landry gets close, maybe he'll want to start getting the elbows out versus Landry, because then the next driver behind will be the prime driver Milan Harris, who is a main competitor for the win in the prime class here today. But as they make the way on through the corners, how is Matthew Smith doing? I can hear some of you asking, well, on his debut in the prime class, he's going to take a little look there versus Edwin Offred, the pro driver, and right now Smith running P5 in class, in the prime class P12 overall, keeping it together nice and smooth at the moment, but he's still got plenty of ground to gain because the drivers ahead of him, well, he's got the likes of Speaker, also Warren, Harris and Logston, they're all ahead, and he'll want to hunt them down as soon as possible. But as they head across the timeline, once again we're looking a little bit further back to Kevin Lizarazo here, who currently P3 in the AM class, P15 overall, has got closed up behind him fellow competitor Dan Alcaranza in the class, and also Albert Brand is inching closer, but Alcaranza loses the rear of the car there, just the car becoming a little bit sheepish on rotation, and the Ferrari, of course, when those tyres get very hot at the rear, they do start to become less grippy, and we can see there for the Chilean, the car just going a bit sideways, and that's costing the place to Albert Brand, who now makes his way up into P16 overall. But as they come through the S's here, Alcaranza keeping it smart, keeping it sensible, and delivering as they make the way out to 5 and down towards 6. We can also see that Lizarazo going a bit slow. I think he's had an off track. In fact, he has. He went a bit wide at turn number 5, and look at this from Adrian Federowski, who's looking to go on the offensive here. Well, I'm not sure what he's ate for breakfast this morning, but I can tell you, if he's had all 5 of his Weetabix, he's turbocharged by them because he's going on the offensive, and this is fantastic to see from the Canadian driver as he goes hunting after Daniel Carranza down the back straight here, and we ride on board with the Porsche driver going all the way up through the gearbox into 5th gear, right in the toe there. That's exactly where you want to be within a 10. Now taking a peel to the inside, but Carranza blocks him off there, and I think Federowski was being a bit optimistic to think about creeping there. You could see Carranza was already positioning the car far over to the left of the inside, but Federowski said, hey, I'm going to try and squeeze the gap and push Carranza out of the way, but Carranza being firm, but here comes the move down into turn number 12, and as they make the way for the right-hander, Carranza on the outside, and Federowski comes on through on the inside, and Carranza having to lift off there with the understeer of the car as he made his way through the slightly off-camber corner as they head on up towards another lap onto turn number 1. Adrian Fedorowski now up into P3 in class. He's got a long way to go to Curran and Phillips, but still moving up into P3 in class. He's made his intentions very clear in the 222 car, which is he wants to be on that podium today, and good on the man as they make the way on down. Meanwhile, Matthew Smith's had it go wrong. As we understand, he's run a bit wide at turns 3 and 4, and he's lost the place to Albert Brand, and also had to yield to both Wadis Fedorowski and Ocaranta, and pulls the car over, going a bit slowly at the moment. I think trying to get his composure back together and settle the car back down. A mistake, a very rare one for him, but indeed, if you're going to make a mistake anywhere, Road Atlanta is the place to make the mistake of all circuits. And as he makes his way into turn number 6, now building that momentum up, I think there's a problem with the car because he is going quite slowly, and in fact I think he's picked up quite a bit of damage. I think he's hit the wall coming out of turns 2 and 3, and that would explain the story. But meanwhile, in fact, the car is crabbing a little bit where it's not quite driving in a straight line, as we hear that Mark Senegal's had an off track and jumped to the pits as well. As they make the way on through onto another lap shortly. We look to drivers who've just gone on to the next lap. The lead drives, and Luke Burtenshaw is our cameraman's focus at the front of the field, but he's got the company of Jordan Butler behind as they head through turns 2 and into 3, and down the hill they start to go through turn number 4 as well. And as they come charging on down, well, Burtenshaw has played a strong hand right now in terms of getting into lead and not giving up, but Jordan Butler in return, the DNA Motorsports driver here, really relishing this opportunity to go on the offensive as he hunts after Burtenshaw. But as they make the way down towards turn number 6, a bit further back, also battling hard, here is Ilya Speaker versus Jermaine Warren, and Warren goes a little bit wide at turn number 5 and has to lift off there, and as a result, Speaker up in position as we see Glenn Bratton there trying to stay out of the way, a lap down with the blue flags waving, and everybody going around Glenn Bratton at the moment, but still keeping his foot in it, there's no doubt about that, as we hear that Smith is into the pit lane for damage on the car. We saw that earlier, of course, the car was crabbing slightly down the straight, and he's finally made his way into the pit box as I look out the commentating box window. But as we see Justin Braggan here making his way past Edwin Offred, and Offred having a poor run out of turn number 7, and Braggan gain in that P11 position overall. The change overall not in class, with Braggan being a prime, meanwhile Offred being a pro, and you can see here Glenn Bratton trying to stay all the way over to the right hand side to stay clear of the lead lap drivers. I think enough where they're getting a bit too close for comfort for Bratton. I don't think there's anywhere else Bratton can go other than put the car off the circuit as they make the way up through the chicane, but still they all make it safely through and on to the next lap. But as we look from them, here is Logsdon versus Milan Harris, and Harris up the inside there, and Harris holds the lead of the prime class now as they make the way up towards turn number 3. Well, Milan Harris has been building, and we just caught the pass for the lead there, as now the Rockefeller Racing driver is into lead of the prime class, P4 overall. And as they make the way down the hill, is there any response coming from James Logsdon? Of course, our pole sitter, not just in the prime class but overall here today. Well, as it started to fall off the pace, the car, and perhaps they only had a few laps in the car, perhaps they've identified an issue. Well, I think right now Logsdon will be staying with him as much as possible, but Milan Harris really seems to be hooked up. But that last lap from Logsdon, a 20.52, something went very wrong that last lap to bring Milan Harris into contention, because their gap was much more than that previously. And as they make the way down the back straight now, what can Logsdon throw back into the mix as they make the way up towards turn number 10? As they come charging on down, how's it going in the AM class lead battle, I hear you ask? Well, here's your AM leader of Blake Phillips in the 221 car. And the privateer is all over the back of Jermaine Warren, battling for overall position. Behind him is Samuel Curran. The gap between the two of them, 1.5 seconds, and Curran currently second in the AM class as he makes his way down the hill and into turns 10A and 10B. As he rolls his way on through here, I think he's got some work to do if he wants to try and pick that place back up and take the lead off of Phillips. And of course, Phillips having that brilliant start that saw him jump ahead of what was Samuel Curran. And now, as they make the way up towards turn number 1, once again on points for them, lap number 9, Curran starting to fall just a little bit further and further back, but we have to keep in mind that Phillips does have the toe of Jermaine Warren to work with. Further behind, Fernando Takahashi hunting down Edwin Nofre here, trying to gain an overall position, not a class position, with Nofre being a pro versus Takahashi in the prime class. And then we have Adrian Fedorowski who's looking up the inside here of Albert Brand into turn number 1 for overall position for P14. And as they make the way on through, you can see Brand on the outside holding the line, but Fedorowski saying no, I'm going all in, and he gets it done. And Albert Brand out of sorts, and Ocaranta now being made to go round the outside through 4, but you can see all the dust and pickup coming off of those right hand side tyres as he made his way through 4, and instead has had to back the car off through fear of losing the rear to the right hand side tyre grip as he made his way through 4, and he has to wait his turn. But Adrian Fedorowski definitely right now on a mission to pick his way through the order, and in terms of his lap pace, he's not quite on the pace of Blake Phillips or Samuel Curran, but he's close, and if he continues his way and Phillips or can start to battle, there's no reason why he couldn't get close to them later in the race. But speaking of getting close, here's Ilya Speaker versus Jermaine Warren. Warren in the Ferrari, of course. They make the way out to turn number 10, and as the 114 driver, they tried to go round the outside to inside of Speaker. Speaker having none of it and deciding to get his elbows out slightly there, which he's allowed to do, to be fair, as long as he's not forcing another driver off the track, as long as he gives them respectful racing room. And they make the way accordingly through the corners, and it's all fair and love and Warren as they make the way through turn number 1 and up towards turn number 2. Speaker definitely looking to try and hold on to that P3 in the prime class. I think Logston and Harris are too far up the road for these guys to contend with right now. Of course, the gap between them being approximately 5 seconds. I think for Speaker, P3 will be enough, and he wants to consolidate that position. And Jermaine Warren, well, we talked about earlier that he seems to be on a little bit of a dip of form after the season opener at Red Bull Ring, but what we're seeing here today is a new Jermaine Warren, or the rebirth of Jermaine Warren, where he's really trying to put that pressure onto Speaker, and it's lovely to see as he makes his way through the right-hander there at turn number 6. Well, Kevin Lizarazo into the pit lane. I'm not sure what's gone wrong with Lizarazo, but I'll keep you updated as soon as we hear anything. But he makes his way on in, and Matthew Smith, oh my goodness, he's had a spin. He's a lap down already on the main portion of the field. Well, no, he's not a lap down the whole field. My apologies there. He is almost a lap down the field with Burtenshaw only 7 seconds behind. But Smith having a spin there at turn 10, and not a happy debut in the prime class when all is said and done, as he comes across the timeline. And Lizarazo in the pits having some work done on the car. There's damage picked up on that BMW, and that is why he's had to come into the pit lane. But looking back to the drivers who are currently battling for position, we can see here Speaker holding on to P7 at the moment versus what is Warren behind as they make the way through turn number 12 and on to the next lap. Half the race time duration done. We've still got just under 12 minutes to go, plus the final lap, and the Speaker looks to keep Warren at bay. What about up front, I hear you ask? Well, we look to our race leader, and this is your leader of Luke Burtenshaw from Vector by RSR running off into the distance. But meanwhile, Jordan Butler, who was looking to take the fight to Burtenshaw earlier on, now he's got a problem. He's got this man in the Lamborghini Evo Huracan, and that is Jason Landry here, who hadn't started a bit further down the grid on the third row, not where he's commonly used to placing on the grid. Now the Canadian looking to go on the offensive here as they make the one through, but also we've got a change of position here in the lead of the AM class. Samuel Curran coming on past Blake Phillips, and I'm hearing in my ear Phillips getting it wrong at turn 5 and running wide, and Samuel Curran is now into the lead of the class, but only by 6/10 of a second, and with them both in equal machinery, it comes down to the driver as they make the way on down. But we look from them back up to the battle for P2 here, and a jump back and forth between two lead battles, if you don't mind us doing so, and we can see that Jordan Butler really having that pressure on him to hold off Jason Landry as we ride on board the gearbox here of the DNA Motorsports driver, looking back at Jason Landry, who looks to try and pick off his foe with limited time remaining. As they head across the line onto the 12th lap under race conditions for these guys, we can see that Butler right now looking the more composed. The two drivers coming out onto the straightaways, but in return Landry looking the faster, particularly here with the Landry. He's just got that natural rotation in the car with the centre of mass being behind the driver with the engine position. We can see there it was Christensen, PG Christensen having to move out of the way with the blue flags, and Butler being offline slightly or off pace coming down through turn number 4. It's disrupted his momentum, and you can see, look at the speed that Landry in the Lamborghini is able to take there through the S's. That's just the fact, the nature of the car. The Lamborghini really sets up for that rotation with the engine behind the drive being mid-engine rear-wheel drive, whereas the BMW M4 of Jordan Butler, front-engine rear-wheel drive, the engine's in the front, the centre of the mass is far forward, it's ahead of the driver, and therefore the car's more native to understeer, so it's not as strong through the corners by default. And as they make the way down the back straight, Landry's close, but this is where the BMW has its advantage. It's got straight line speed compared to Lamborghini, which is getting closer and closer and closer in the draft, and we can see that Butler goes defensive here. They head down the hill. Landry's going to try and go around the outside. Butler defends as much as possible, squeezing Landry there, because he knows if he gives Landry even an inch, Landry's going to take a mile out of him. And as they make the way over the hill of 11 and down towards 12, Landry's still waiting in the wings in P3, but Jordan Butler under huge pressure. But as they come through, the story of the battle of the leaders here continues behind, with the Pro-Am leaders of Milan Harris and James Logston battling for position. Of course, Milan Harris at this point has got it all to play for, not currently leading the Pro-Am class. Logston meanwhile is leading, and Logston really doing well in qualifying, but Milan Harris just seems to have upped the ante here in the race conditions. And right now, can he keep the beast of Bearpope at bay as they make the way down the hill all the way towards turn number 5 through the S as they go? Again, in equal machinery here, so it comes down to the driver, it comes down to that ability to take the most out of the car. And as we see the two battles in camera for a brief moment, Logston right now, I think, cooling things down And I wouldn't be surprised if right now he's doing a lot of analysis. He's putting it through the mental computer, is his brain, and looking for that move later on. Meanwhile, we've done another switch in the AM class lead. Samuel Crone getting back ahead of Blake Phillips again. And I believe that Blake Phillips may have had just a brief off at turn number 5, and that's to relinquish the place once more. But Curran is under pressure as well. So we have got battles, 2 battles for the leads of classes, and also a battle for P2 in the pro class. It is all kicking off here at the Lake Juncture. And speaking of the Lake Juncture, where you can see as they make their way down under braking, Harris right now out braking his row of James Logston and holding firm for the time being. But those are the key battles at the moment. There's not much else happening elsewhere in circuit lower down the field, so we're going to focus on these for the time being. But at any moment, of course, Road Atlanta could lead to more kicking off, and as soon as it does happen, we'll do our best to bring it to you. But looking at Butler here, holding on to P2 for now. Landry staying close, and the thing for Landry is he's got to get closer and really breathe down the neck of his rivals. You see the look at the rear of the car, almost snapping loose on Landry, taking all the apex curve at turn number 3. He's got to be careful of that, because if he takes too much apex curve and doesn't let the rear of the car settle down, it will come back to bite him. And speaking of biting, well, here come Blake Phillips and Samuel Crone. We ride on board here with Blake Phillips on the dashboard as he makes his way down. The wipers waving there. Well, there's no rain today, but it may be coming in iRacing one day, but that's beside the point. As he makes his way out the corner, Phillips so close he could reach out and touch the rear ring of his rival. But as they head up towards turn number 6, will Phillips dive to the inside? No, he waits his turn. He's not able to get the move done. Instead, he looks for the next opportunity as they make their way through 6 up into 7. And the thing is, what Blake Phillips is really saying to Curran at this point is, look, I can stay right there with you. I can be right in your rear view mirror, and I can be that imposing. And that's the problem for Samuel Curran, is the fact that he does have a driver right behind him who is not fazed by the idea of being in the tow in that dirty air. And as Phillips gets closer and closer here, all 6 cylinders firing, of course, in the BMW engine, down the hill they go. And you can see as they make their way into the braking zone, he's going to be on the outside here. On the brakes they battle, and Curran brakes a little bit earlier than Blake Phillips, and Phillips goes round the outside of 10A, gets it hold up in 10B, and gets the job done, or does he? As here we see Samuel Curran coming back there side by side into the final corner once more as they come on through. Still 6 minutes on the clock, and Curran continues to hold on here. There's not long left to go, and I think there's plenty of mileage left in this battle. It's not over yet as they make their way up through turn 1 once again. But you can see Blake Phillips and Curran both evenly matched here. They're locking horns, and as they make their way down the hill this time, how's it going to unfold on this lap? That's the big question. We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, the battle between Milan Harris and James Logston, I can tell you the gap between the two of them has opened up to 1.3 seconds. I think it's going to calm down a little. It's the calm before the storm, and the battle between Butler and Landry is still half a 10. We're monitoring it, but right now we are focusing on this AM class lead battle as they make their way in towards turn at number 6. And Samuel Crone this time will be hoping he does not get a tank slap or a load of oversteer on the exit at turn number 7. And he hooks out very nicely there. In fact, taking a better exit compared to Blake Phillips, just taking a bit more of the exit curve. And Phillips losing that initially, but now he'll start the game. But I think Blake Phillips has left it a little bit late this time around in order to be able to go for the move. We see Justin Braggett in the rear of the picture and Edwin Offer as well. But Adrian Fedorowski and Daniel Carranza, the P3, P4 AM drives a long way behind. So our top 2 here do not have to worry about that battle coming to them as they make their way through turn 10A and 10B. But as they come on through, Samuel Crone holding on for now. We cut away from them briefly to look at Jordan Butler here, who continues to hold on to P2 in the pro class and overall for DNA Motorsports. But you can see going a bit deep there, and Landry getting ever closer, getting painfully close as we ride on board here with the Canadian as he makes his way through the S's. And the thing for Landry is we see Butler loses the rear end, but he catches it just in time. But as they make their way out of turn 5, this is the opportunity Landry's been waiting for. Side by side they're going to turn number 6. Now does Landry press the issue here, or does he wait for the run down towards turn number 10? Surely he's got to think of the latter as they head through turn number 7. You can see there Mark Senegal getting well out of the way onto the grass, deciding he doesn't want to be any part of this as they make their way down the back straight. But now Landry's there, he's ready to pounce. Can he find a way on through, or can Butler frustrate him this time? Well, he's got all the mileage to do this. And as they make the way on Daniels, he's peeling out to the outside already. On the right hand side as our cameraman turns things around. And as they head into the braking zone here, Landry on the outside, breaking it down, trying to go as late as possible. He gets his nose ahead briefly, but Butler once again being the later of the breakers as they make the way out of the chicane and across 11, down towards 12 they charge. 4 minutes still left on the clock, and as they come through the right hand, and now Landry is so close. Meanwhile, further back there is Blake Phillips going up the inside of Samuel Crane, who's gone a little bit deep, and I think he's locked up the brakes there into the chicane, and that's cost him dearly. That's opened up a gap of 6 tenths. I think for Crane, he feels though he can get it back soon. Meanwhile, Jordan Butler, as we cut back to this battle for P2 in the Pro class, we can see that Butler really in a scramble right now. I think Jordan Butler is on the edge. I do not think he's got anything else left to throw at this, and everything he has thrown at is, oh my good lord, and Jason Landry was going to say, I think Butler's going to be the one to crack. It was Jason Landry instead who's lost the rear end there and loses the place to Milan Harris, who the prime leader jumps up to P3, Landry drops to P4, and James Logston is further back here, and I think Logston's had to back it off now, much like Jason Landry only moments ago, and that is the battle for P2 done and dusted, I reckon, with 3 minutes to go. But Landry in the end, in an uncharacteristic mistake, all the mistakes were going Butler's way, and then suddenly, well, that shows you how hard Landry was pushing that Lamborghini. I think he found the threshold and then gone beyond the limit, and he found that the car will bite back. But meanwhile, whilst that's been happening, we look back to the battle here for the lead between Blake Phillips and Samuel Curran, and I think Phillips now, with not long left to go, only a few more laps to be turned, I think he's starting to feel the light is at the end of the tunnel. But of course that light could be obscured at any moment if he finds himself having to look more and more in his rearview mirror. 2.5 minutes, that will mean for these guys 2 more laps as our leaders have gone on to the penultimate lap. As Phillips holds on here, well, Curran's looking the faster of the two, particularly out of that chicane. He took a 10th out of Phillips exiting the chicane as they make the way on to the next lap, onto lap number 18 that's turned here today. And as they head into the braking zone for turn 1, Curran's still got a shot at this, there's no doubt about it. And behind them, there's now started to see a queue from Justin Brangan, the pro driver here, P10 overall, and then Edwin Offred, P11 overall, the pro driver here, P5 in the pro class, as they make the way on down the hill. And how can they get it to this fight? As we're hearing the Glenn Bratton's had to jump to the pits after an error which has seen him go into the wall somewhere, but off circuit. That's Mark Senegal staying clear of everybody as they make the way on around. And meanwhile, Kevin Lizarazo has just found his way past PG Christensen, and I think Christensen's got a slight problem with the car. Well, I may be mistaken. In fact, it just looks as though that front right tyre, from the driver's perspective, is a little bit out of line. No, I think that's just simply the cameraman's perspective, in fact. And Christensen has now got Alcaranza behind him, and these guys effectively a lap down the field as they make the way up through the S's and up towards turn number 5. But I think Alcaranza's going to come through rather rapidly here, and Christensen's going to leave all the inside space open as Alcaranza makes his way on through. But Lizarazo up into P5 in the M class, P18 overall, as we look from them back to the combination of Blake Phillips and Samuel Curran. And as our leaders have gone on to the final lap, well, I think they're on the final lap. I may be wrong about this. Blake Phillips has got it all to do in the lead of the AM class. He's currently P8, and as they make the way on down the hill through the right-hander at turn number 12, one more lap between Phillips and a win here today at Road Atlanta. Can he hold on in class, or will Curran be able to find a way to subvert what Blake Phillips has driven so hard to afford today? That's the challenge. But behind, Justin Brangan literally sniffing the rear end right now of Daniel Crank. Can he intervene? Will Edwin Offred behind also intervene, or will they simply just sit there and watch on the popcorn seat view? We hope it is the latter, not the former, for the simple reason we want to see our 2 AM candidates go all the way down to the wire. But that's the way of motorsport, of course, that everybody wants to gain overall position as they make the way up towards turn number 6. Meanwhile, where is our leader? I hear you ask. Well, here he is, Luke Burtenshaw, comfortably out front as he makes his way on down towards turn number 10. And this will be the last lap turn. There's only 10 seconds left on the clock, and right now looking very comfortable as he makes his way through the chicane. Well, he may not have started on pole, but he took pole early on after the start of the race and has run away with it to the finish. Well, here is your winner, Luke Burtenshaw from Vector by RSR, takes the win at Road Atlanta overall and in the pro class, ahead of Jordan Butler in P2, and it will be Milan Harris to the line, who takes 3rd place overall, but more importantly the win in the Pro-Am class. Landry P4, John Lowes on P5, and then James Logston P6 ahead of Ilya Speaker P7. And what about Blake Phillips? Well, here he comes to the line, and he will take the win in the AM class with Blake Phillips ahead of rival Samuel Curran, and it will be Justin Brangan who completes the top 10 overall ahead of Edwin Offred P11. Fernando Takahashi comes across the line, P12, a solid drive from Fernando Takahashi today. Jermaine Want was looking strong earlier in the race, but it wasn't quite there in the end. A couple of off tracks, I think, held him back. And then it will be Adrian Fedorowski, who shortly will come on through to complete the AM podium, P14 overall for QC Motorsports A. He might have started a long way back in P24, but he's made his way through the field. Daniel Carranza, P15, Albert Brand will be our last driver to finish on the lead lap in P16 as he comes on through to the line. That is the equivalent of P7 in the Pro-Am class. But as he crosses the line there, all is said and done in terms of laps being turned and everyone taking their checkered flag. And now we take it to Riva to bring you the race results, of course subject to any stewards' inquiries. Well, after 25 minutes of racing here today in the sprint at Road Atlanta in round 4 of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT3 Championship for 2022 as hosted on iRacing, Luke Burtenshaw taking the overall win in the end by 5 seconds over Jordan Butler. Butler taking the fight to Burtenshaw earlier on, but it was the case as the time went on in the race. Burtenshaw was just able to up the ante and break the distance, and then Milan Harris completing the podium overall with that P3 for the Prime driver, a well-deserved drive from the Rockefeller Racing driver, indeed your winner in the Prime class. Jason Landry, P4, the switch to Lamborghini Huracan being an investment, and it seems though that investment paid off to a degree today, but just losing out in the hunt at Jordan Butler, getting it wrong right towards the end, but keeping it out of the wall to come home P4, ahead of John Laz on P5. James Logston, P6, a great pole lap from James Logston, and it translated into early race pace, but it seemed as though the car was starting to lose pace later on, and indeed perhaps there was an issue with the car or something in between, but still P6 from him, ahead of Ilya Speaker, P7, Blake Phillips, P8, they're taking the win in the AM class, just ahead of Samuel Curran in a great rivalry all the way through, and then Justin Bragg completing the overall top 10, with Edwin Offray there being the best of the rest in P11, the pro driver. But then as we come on to the individual class results, starting with our pros, we can see Luke Burtenshaw here today taking that win ahead of Jordan Butler and Jason Landry, and John Lauzon finishing 12 seconds off the leaders there, with Edwin Offray a further 11 seconds behind, and Lauzon and Offray not having that days to remember at Road Atlanta, but still plenty for them to build upon and look forward to in a week's time. Then we come on to the Prime class, and here today, your Prime podium made up of Milan Harris, James Logston and Ilya Speaker. Congratulations to the trio, with Justin Bragg at P4 there and Fernando Takahashi completing the Prime top 5, and then Jermaine Warren, Albert Brand, Matthew Smith and Spencer Torrance completing the Prime standings. Matthew Smith having a difficult debut, looked strong in qualifying, but in the race it didn't go the way he wanted it for the DNA Motorsports team, and Spencer Torrance much the same for Firelight Motorsports, having a very strong qualifying session, but the race just not working out. But indeed, Road Atlanta perhaps the most difficult circuit on the calendar in terms of stamina and keeping that balance of the car, and they'll be looking to bounce back in a week's time. And what about our AM class? Well, in our AM class, we saw that closely fought battle for the win between Blake Phillips and Samuel Curran, but Phillips taking the win in the end by only 3 attempts over his BMW peer, both of them privateers, of course, and then Adrian Fedorowski being in P3 there, fighting his way all the way from last place up to that P3, a solid drive from the QZ Motorsports A driver, ahead of Dan Ocaranza and Kevin Lizarazo completing the AM top 5. A number of AM drivers having difficulty today, but the majority of them finishing it at some point in the race and bringing it home with more than half the race completed. With outside the top 5, PG Christensen, Jesse Jameson Jr., Mark Senegal and Glenn Bratton. And then we did have the one retirement from Jose Maury, who had those issues on the formation app and they had to box the car and they weren't able to get it repaired in time to go racing once again. Unfortunate, we do hope the QZ Motorsports driver is able to take to the grid in round number 5 and they can find out what that issue was. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are the results, and we'll bring you the updated championship standings, of course, when we kick off next week's broadcast. But until then, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed and want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community in terms of the series we run and everything we do in between, then why not check out our official Discord invite link available on screen, where you can join all the members who make up the grid, talk to them, and also get involved yourself, and also our Twitter there, the MPRL Twitter, being at twitter.com/Middle of the Pack Racing, or MOP Racing as it's known in short, and there you can find out all the latest updates on what's going on with the MOP team and also the leagues run by MPRL. But with that, now drivers will be packing up their bags, indeed the teams will be packing up the cars, as they'll be making their way northwards to Canada, for in a week's time we'll be turning at the circuit Giles Villeneuve, a very tricky circuit, an enclosed street circuit, albeit with a bit of natural scenery around it as well, so a bit of a hybrid street circuit. But the point is, one mistake could see our drivers hit the walls, and particularly the wall of champions on the final corners, and we'll have to wait and see who out of our championship contenders can steer clear of the walls and who may fall victim to them. All that will be brought to you on Saturday the 15th of October 2022 in round number 5, and you won't want to miss it. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. We've been the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.